Okay, for everybody wanting to know how to, my gasket, right, not that one, but the one for the base gasket, it's leaking, so I gotta replace it. First thing you do, take off all your fairings. You know, fairings, they're pretty easy to take off. And then you gotta take off your tank bolts on both, there's 4 of them. And then you gotta unplug these 2. One's the level, and the other one's a fuel pump sending unit. And then this hose right here is your your vent hose. It goes down through here, all the way down here next to your chain in that hole. Pull that up. And the other side, there's one little hose. I'll show you. This little hose right here. They have these tabs welded. So what you gotta do, damn it, sorry, bugs. This goes up through here, and then it goes up into here, and up through here, and go to here. You gotta take off this, you pull it off, take this off, and slide your hose through here, and then you can put this back on it so you don't lose it. And just let it hang there. And then the fuel filter, you can go worry about taking it off, because when you lift this up, I'll have to go over there and show you. Now, I'm a man of getting the right shit for the right job. I got these are fuel line pliers. And see, let's take the fuel line off. It's got these 2 crimps on both sides. You crimp them together and it pulls off. Now, hold on, let me see if I can. But when you put these in there, you crimp it and it pulls the fuel line off. And I'll do that like so. Pulls right off as soon as you push those 2 tabs together. I got fuel in here, but it won't come out because the fuel sending unit is in the tank. So you won't get gas all over the place. What you do now is to unplug everything, just to get everything out of the way. And then don't forget, unplug one battery terminal. It honestly doesn't matter which one, just because the safety, you never know. But this is the intake and then the sensor. And then you gotta pull all this off to get this guy off. All right, for all you guys that get frustrated, don't start yanking shit. This gray piece slides back. Then you push down and it'll come off. And this piece is like a Ford. You gotta get that red thing, slide it back like so, and should be able to make sure. You got red, slide the red piece back. And sometimes you gotta get up under here, sometimes you don't. Let me check. Nope, you don't. You just push on the red back there, and it lifts up that tab and pulls it right off. All right, you got this plug right here. I think it's the where'd it go? Yeah, down there. I don't even know what that is, honestly. Temperature, maybe. Probably temperature. But it goes to this plug. It doesn't take off on this tab. It looks like it, but when it's in here, and you gotta get a pick, lift up on this tab with a pick, and pull this out. When you get to this point, and like these plugs down here, there's tab up, unplug. Same with them other ones. And then you gotta take the air box out, so it makes it easier to get all this stuff out. There's 2 10mm bolts back here. One here, one over here. Don't try to attempt to move that and jiggle it, and it's just a pain in the butt. So just two 10mm bolts and it comes out. Okay, so I decided not to move the air box because it's you just can't get it out. But it is good to remove those two 10mm bolts so it'll play around so you can take that off, because you still got to take that off and all that off. And after you loosen that guy, they made it where you can put this right through here to there to unscrew it, so you can take that off. It popped right out, so you can remove this out the way. And most likely I'll take off that throttle cable, so I won't be in the way of trying to get everything off. And all you gotta do is turn this and use your other hand and take that off. And all you gotta do is loosen this nut, and this will slide right through, so you can take the throttle cable off. To get the intake off, you gotta loosen that bolt. Once you loosen it with a wrench, it's very stupid how they made it. I use my magnet to hold it so it'll come off, and then you gotta take off that top one right there so it'll loosen the intake so you can get it off. I didn't notice there's a notch, so all you gotta do is just loosen that one with the nut and then take off that top one, and then it'll slide right out of that channel there. Alright, so y'all know I bag and tag everything, so you know where every bolt goes back where it's supposed to go. And with this intake, you'll see the way it's shaped, and see that little sliver? Make sure all that matches back up when you put it together. And on the intake, see that there's a gasket side goes on the cylinder head, and then this side goes for the intake. And that, like I said, that little sliver, make sure it lines up with the intake when this goes on like that. Okay, I took the exhaust off. It's two bolts for the in or the out, and then whoever had the bike before me, that was loose, so mine just fell out. But okay, what you gotta do now? Loosen this. Use a quarter or a massive flathead. What you gotta do is look in there, and you gotta turn the wheel, and it'll match up with that line, and it's just to get the top dead center for the piston. I think it's, let me see. I'm gonna have to put it in gear. So what you want to do is you can put it in first gear. They say fifth gear is better, but I mean, it don't really matter in my opinion. And then you just bump the wheel. Make sure you take the spark plugs out. And there's two spark plugs. I know that sounds crazy, but there's one here and one on the other side. And there's an O-ring on that side. You can take it off, put a regular socket on it, a regular spark plug socket. It's 5/8. And then you bump it, but to take the valve cover off, just 4 top bolts. Pretty simple. And then you gotta line up in here T1. You gotta bump the wheel, and it goes slow, but you gotta keep bumping it until T1 lines up with that line. And then on this side. Oh, my back. Your notch has to line up with 12 o'clock, up and down with the motor. I don't recommend doing this without taking the engine out. But this base gasket was garbage. It was what was blowing oil out right there on that edge. And yeah, that was fucking terrible. Sorry for the language, but you gotta take off the oil cooler, the horn, the rectifier, the clutch cable. You gotta remove all of that just to get these out. The valve, or the head, the head, I guess you can say, was the hardest thing to pull out. I'm replacing that gasket too because it was shot. But yeah, and you gotta remove the ignition coils, and you can unplug these. It's no big deal. One's bigger than the other, so you don't get them confused. Balloon. All right, so I got the base gasket on. I put some RTV because the base gasket that OEM Benelli is a piece of crap, but the valve or the head gasket is good. And by the way, there's 2 spark plugs, like I said before. You gotta take out this snap ring, and you just gotta pry on this little cylinder here, and it comes out. I would have videoed it, but I completely got busy. And then you take this bolt out, take this off, make sure everything's lined up. And then nobody talks about it, but your chain tensioner right here, you can unbolt it. That center one just takes it out, so and there's this flat head in there to tighten or loosen the chain tension. But you can unbolt these two, and that's the whole tensioner will slide out, and then it'll have the chain completely loose. And if you try to put the sprocket and the chain on with the chain tensioner, the sprocket won't go on to the keyway that's in there. So take this off, and then all you gotta do is put it all back together. Torque specs for these is 20 Newton metric, which is 15 foot-pounds. And then that you gotta tighten the hell out of. I completely forgot to torque it, which I'll torque it. And these two are just 15, or I think 10 foot-pound. And then you just reassemble how you took it apart. And let's put all new gaskets, put a new gasket on the chain tensioner, new gasket. And I'm about to do a clutch. I'll do a video of that too.